Well, hey everybody. Let's see. I see that we've got one watcher so far. So I'm Stephanie Weaver, and we have with us a guest, Barney Davey, and we're going to be chatting with him today, all about artist life and how to achieve the arts work life dream balance that I think all of us really, really want to have. So as people kind of pop on, I would like for you to go ahead and tag a friend or, ping somebody that that's an artist who would benefit from hearing this information, because this is going to be fabulous. We've got, Barney Davey. He is the author of 6 books that have all been bestsellers all around art marketing. He's also written articles around for art world news, art business news, and professional artists. So he is caffeinated and ready to chat with us today. So grab a friend. I've got you guys up on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you have any questions, we love questions. Feel free to pop those in the chat, and we might post those up there. And I'm going to do a couple little things different this week than what I've done in the past. So I'm going to give you guys a couple seconds and cue the intro so you can grab your friends. All right, grab your friends. We're going to cue the intro. And it's up there in the little corner. That is such a fun intro. Okay, so for everybody that's here already, we're going to do something a little bit different while we kind of bring in some friends. And whenever I do these things, they always feel very awkward in the beginning, because it's like you're waiting on people to get here, and then because it's kind of a one-sided conversation, unless you guys pop the questions in the chat. So I had a joke that I heard this morning that just made me giggle, so I figured I'd share a joke. It's all right, so why did the coach go to the bank? To get his quarterback. That's just so silly. I came home to my husband, and I just went up straight to him, didn't give him any lead about this is a joke. I didn't give him any lead. I just, why did the coach go to the bank? And he just went, I don't know. But anyway, all right, so I kind of gave a little bit of intro, but I'm going to do it again for those that just joined us. So meet Barney Davey. Barney Davey is the author of, what is it, 6 books now? 6 books. And he also writes for Art World News, Art Business News, and Professional Artists, and has a website called Art Marketing News. And that's how I actually found him. I was doing some research on an article that I'm writing, and I ended up paying him just to see if I could do a guest blog post. And then we started a conversation that was only scheduled for an hour, but lasted 3 hours. He is just that much knowledge in that head right there. So, so Barney, I think I've got to stop talking a little bit. And I know you have a topic that's at the heart of what you love to talk about, which is, encouraging artists to live the artist life and get that art life work dream balance. And so one of the questions that I have for you is, what does that mean for you? What is it that we need to be doing?
Well, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And it was fun to meet you. And I couldn't believe when you just said 3 hours that the time went by, because we just kept talking. We had so much in common, and share so many beliefs with the same thought about how to help artists and what it's like to be an artist today. And I've been helping artists in one way or another since 1988. It's 33 years. It's hard for me to imagine I've been hanging around the art business that long, but I have. And I've, as you mentioned, written books and write a weekly blog post on art marketing. I think I've written something like 2 million words on art marketing if I add up all the content and all the books and all the blog posts and all the contributed articles that I've written for the magazines that you talked about before. So it's pretty prolific. And I've also created dozens of courses and live workshops and online workshops, just an endless amount of content I've pumped out there thinking about how to get your work to market. And I'll be quite honest, for many of those years, I pursued the singular thought that artists should embrace everything that they can and learn everything that they can about marketing, and then turn around and apply all of that knowledge toward getting their work to market and making a lot of sales. And I was doing that kind of with blinders on in terms of what is it like to be an artist? What does it mean to be an artist? And how well do my thoughts about pursuing the business and the art marketing side, how well do they coincide with the actual life that most people are living as an artist, and even the desires that most people who create art have with regard to getting their work out into the world. And eventually I realized that what I was promoting was good information and useful and would help any artist do better in their business and with their marketing, getting their work out into the world. But it wasn't realistic in terms of how two things. One, how much artists wanted to do with the information that I had available for them on email marketing and using websites and social media and traditional media, advertising, postcards, publicity, press releases, talk about it all, and to the point of overwhelming artists. Yeah. And eventually came to realize that not only some, but most only wanted to use this information in the way that I thought it could be best used. In other words, what I was in some ways producing was overkill in terms of, okay, I'm interested to know about that, but what do I have the desire to want to actually follow through and put all that stuff into place? And the answer to that was, excuse me, in most cases, the answer was no, I don't. It doesn't fit into either I don't want to embrace it because the whole idea of business is something that it's a necessary evil for me, or I don't have time, or I'm just not interested. There could be any number of reasons why artists get themselves into business or start making art and then struggle with the business side of it. And if you let people like me, who was out there beating the drum on this, make you feel uncomfortable and maybe not worthy, or that I'm not doing the best job that I could, if you started feeling guilty about it, then if I've ever made that happen to you or anyone else, then I apologize, because that was not my intention. And just thinking all of this through made me realize that you meaning any artist, can't just take the business side of it or the art side of it and put it in a silo and forget about the rest of it. If you're going to live this life and make art and create it, you've got to find that some balance of between making art and how much you want to put into it as a business, and then just living your life as an artist in a way that makes you feel satisfied or fulfilled that you are actually creating art, and that you don't have anxiety over how much of it I sell and how successful I become. I think that's, unless that's your driving number one, pardon me again, unless that's your driving number one ambition, then don't put that at the top of your heap and start making yourself miserable when you realize I'm just not going to do all this stuff. I don't care if Barney or anybody else told me it's beyond what I'm capable of. and you should be okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I find I'm here taking notes, by the way. So, so that's why I'm looking down. Yeah. So finding that balance between art and art business is an individualistic approach. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of us, we don't necessarily do. Instead, what we go out there and say is, what do I need to do to get like 10,000 followers? And there's always somebody out there that has the formula to do that. And that formula is also, I've got other opinions about the formulas, but they're trying to sell you something most of the time is what those formulas are trying to do. But and then when you actually look at them, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. Post 3 times a day. You got to post, and this is about a year or so, 2 years ago, and it's probably still that way for Facebook now, where that you want to post some content about your content, then content from somebody else, and then like live content, including Instagram, and then something else. And they want like 5 different posts because Facebook chooses who can view your things. And so as soon as you see that, you're just, I don't want to do that. I'll be posting all the time. And that's
exactly. And then, and that's just one thing. You're just talking about social media and getting 10,000 followers. And I think that you sell on relationships. In fact, this came to me last night, and that is, if you don't have a following, then grow one. But I don't think of social media. I'm getting less enamored of social media. I'm not saying shut it down or ignore it. I think that would be foolish. But I believe it's the human to human contact that artists use. That's how you sell art in most cases, unless you are going to gear up and you are that person. And usually the people that you see that have 10,000 followers or a really big, robust art business have a partner involved with them that's helping them. Because the reality is, as artists have a disadvantage over almost all other businesses, and that is that as an artist, you have to conceive of what it is that you want to create to put it out into the world. And it's a unique thing. And then on top of that, you have to create it and find a way to market it. Whereas most people, an art gallery, they spend time seeking new artists and trying to be aware of what's going on in the business, but they're not creating art. They're selling a product, in this case art, that someone else brought to them, and they're creating a market for it. So they're not on that creation side. That leaves them more time to think about their business. That artists who are in business by themselves, they got to find time for the studio and creation and just downtime to regenerate so that you can actually make your best art and get your best ideas. Then you have to put all that into place, and that's even before you start turning on the business. So the idea of trying to grow a really robust business that's big with 10,000 followers or huge amount of sales on an ongoing basis, doing it on your own is really difficult. So that can put you in a position of being really frustrated, maybe angry or upset or just disappointed.
Just plain old tired.
Tired, right? Just worn out. They were trying to do it all, and that puts you in an imbalance. And that's what I've been thinking about more and more lately, is that's not a way to live your life. It's not a way to be an artist. And so, well, what do you do about it? You come back to say, if you have to prioritize and find out with that conversation with yourself and maybe a significant other or someone else who you trust that you share and ask advice on these kind of things. But get to that point where You know what? I could be okay if I don't make this into a booming business and turn making art into a full-time career where I'm just going at it heavily every day. But instead, I can dial back and say, I'm going to find a way to make the art that I want to make and find an audience for that art, but do it in a way that doesn't make me crazy. In fact, do it in a way that makes me feel fulfilled and content, that I can seek my own level. Like they say, water seeks its own level. I think the same thing with satisfaction and contentment out of a career, that if you stop letting other people's opinions about your career or your life as an artist should be like, and make your own decisions about it, that's when you can start getting closer to that work life dream,
Mm-hmm.
art life dream work balance. I think and it's going to be different for everybody, and part of it for me is one of the things I addressed recently. I wrote an article, what to do with unsold art if for people not named Andy Warhol. It basically was just going. That was one of the things we talked about when we got into it the other day. And that was, um, here again, artists have a unique problem. If you're a songwriter, if you're an author, if you're a poet, even if you're a digital artist, you don't have stretched frames, cramming every nook and cranny in your house or in your studio, overflowing your studio,
Yeah.
which becomes a visual and spatial reminder that I'm not selling, I'm making more art than I'm selling, and that makes me feel guilty. I don't think poets or authors or songwriters look at their playbook, their song playbook, and think, "Oh, I've written 1,000 songs and I've only made, two of them become successful commercial hits or something like that." They don't. They're not guilted by what's in that notebook or on that hard drive. But if you're sitting around your studio and you're running out of space everywhere, and you've given all the art or done everything that you can to get it out of your house or home or studio, it becomes a negative thing. Like, oh, what am I doing wrong? How did I end up in this spot? And I think artists need to find a way to just deal with that. In fact, my easy solution was get it off the frames. And then you showed me the ampersand that you use, the little
Just panels. Yeah, eighth of an inch thick ampersand Jessup boards. They just stack real easy.
you can stack up a whole lot of work in a fairly small space, and then you're not dealing with that. And one of my suggestions was get it off the framer, get it off the stretcher bars, roll it up and inventory it so you know where it is. But you can roll up a lot of art in canvas and put it in a tube.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same art. You know exactly where it is. You can get it out and reframe it, restretch it if you need to, but it's not. It would dramatically reduce your the space that's it's taking up for storage now. But the real idea behind it was find a way to deal with the things that make you feel um, unhappy about your situation as an artist, and deal with them without turning it into, well, the only solution is I really have to get a whole lot better at business and sell a whole bunch of art. Because the reality for most artists is, and this is from my 33 years of experience, they're not going to do it, even when motivated by something like that. And if you're not going to do it and the stuff's piling up, then unless you have the right attitude, having work life dream, I'm spitting it out in different ways than I set it up. Art life dream work balance. If you can get to that if you determine that's what you want to do, and put yourself in a position where these things that would have previously bothered you, like I'm not selling as much art as I want to, or I've got too much inventory laying around, or I'm not getting into the right galleries or shows, you can begin to let a lot of that anxiety go because it's not necessary. And when you let it go, you realize I I could have this life as an artist, and it's a full, robust life, and it's everything that I do. I'm living the life of an artist. If and I contend also, if you I have a new website that I created just for the Artist Life Manifesto. It's artist.life.com. Not pardon me.com. It's I'm so used to saying that it just spilled off my tongue. It's artist.life.
Oh, just artist.life.
Artist.life.
I'll put that up in the show notes here.
And it's what you'll find there is a 3,500 word artist life manifesto where I just kind of do a brain dump on everything that I've thought about over the years in terms of what it means to be an artist and who is an artist and what is art. Because I also get that a lot too from people who, as I say in there somewhere, some people think that they're in a position to have magically been appointed to decide who's an artist and what is art. Well, they're self-appointed, and all they're doing is spouting off opinions, because I think after millions, trillions of words have spoken or written about what is art and who is art, nobody can say definitively. It comes down to an opinion, and you have the right as a human to decide, I don't want to listen to this opinion. I can hear it. I can even evaluate it and accept it, but I accept that I heard it, but I don't have to let the words or opinions of other people color who I am as an artist, or whether I am an artist, or the value of what I put into the world as an artist. That comes from me as a creative person, and this is my creative output.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I have a kind of a phrase that I use about art and what is art. And it's art is an external manifestation of yourself. So it could be anything, written, song, anything. It's a manifestation of something that's individual and totally you. And that's a part of being a creative, is that you just created art. So
right.
Thank you. You can quote me on that. No, just kidding. But I wanted to kind of go back for a second. I wrote down some nuggets here.
Okay.
So you mentioned a little bit about guilt and the guilt that we feel as artists when we see all these things that we're supposed to be doing, to be
right.
great in business and be a successful artist. And I like what you said about really kind of going back and giving yourself a little bit of grace, giving yourself that whatever's needed to get rid of that guilt. And for me, that goes all the way back to what's your original intention with your art. And when the people that I've been art business coaching, I haven't been doing that as long as you have, but and you probably relate this with me. But what I've noticed is not a single one of them said, I want to make $10,000 a month. What they say is, I would like to be a licensed artist, or I would like to be a recognizable artist. That's their version of success. Doesn't have anything to do with the money aspect. And the money aspect is generally related and directly related to business. But the other aspects, like the licensing, that has to do with great art and developing relationships and contracts with those companies. Or even I want to, what's another, so whenever I get together with my art people and do goal settings, like define your success, what does that look like? And what does your life look like? And my personal one is, when I'm 70, I want to work 2 hours a day. And what I decide as 2 hours is I might go to my computer, respond to some stuff, and then the rest of the day I get to go paint. Or I get to go teach. None of that, the painting and the creative side, that's not work to me.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And I
I
think
wonder
that,
where you were going with that with the 2 hours, because I know at 70, you're not going to have just spend 2 hours a day at something and then go watch TV or, sit in the back.
no, I'm
So
not going to watch TV. I don't.
I knew that already. So you put it in perspective of what is work by
Mhm,
defining
exactly.
these other things that I do that make me feel so full are not really work for me. It's an activity that it's pleasurable. I enjoy doing it. And that's a
Yeah.
big part of being a fulfilled artist, is recognizing that and then getting to that point. And, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with coming to the determination that I'm going to have a better life for me and my family if I
Mhm.
don't pursue being a full-time artist. That I can be okay being an artist and having another job that brings in a steady income and maybe health insurance benefits or some of the other
Yeah.
things that you get from being an artist. And then I can spend whatever quality time that I can carve out of the rest of the time that I have available outside of my job to make art on my terms, the way I want to make it, and and learn that to be happy with that. And I contend, and you would read it in the Artist Life Manifesto, you're no less of an artist because you don't have 80 hours a week to spend in the studio grinding out more work. Maybe you only have 8 hours a week. It doesn't make you less
Mhm.
of an artist, or the quality of your work isn't lessened, and who you are as an artist isn't lessened. Some people might say, well, you're not in galleries or shows, or you're not getting in museums, or you're not getting awards.
Yeah.
So what? That's just their opinion, and you have the right to deflect their opinion and say that, whatever your perceptions are have nothing to do with my reality, which is I have this job and I'm okay with that, and I'm making art as I can, and I'm even more okay with that. And I'm good. I'm at that place of peace and balance where, because I decided this is my balance, and I'm not letting other people. I've stopped letting other people push my buttons
Yeah.
and and throwing guilt on me unintentionally in many cases. Like, I think I threw a tremendous amount of guilt on artists over the years with my best interest, with my intention to try to help them, and that was my best interest. But it was to some degree misguided because I didn't understand two things. Very few artists really want to follow through with all the hardcore stuff that I can, throw at you. One of my books is How to Market Art Online. Well, if you go through that, that's a recipe for how to build 10,000 followers and build a strong email list. But it's also a serious commitment of time and energy in learning a lot about business and marketing techniques and tools that artists may not have, especially if you're not working at it on a full-time basis or don't have somebody else to help you with it. You may not have the bandwidth to address all of that. And it's just as likely, even greater probability, you don't have the interest, um, enough interest in the subject matter to stick with it. And I think one of the quotes, went through that Artist Life Manifesto on artist.life and pulled out some quotes, and I think I found about 30 of them that I'm going to turn into social media posts over time. But one of them was, if you're not enjoying the process, you'll never turn it into something successful. And I believe that that's true. If you really just hate it, if the idea of doing this is just sand in your hair or whatever, just lost for an analogy here, but if you dislike the whole process, you're probably never going to embrace it and make it work for you. So understand where you're at with that, and be okay with it, and come to some conclusion. That's not what I'm going to do. It's not what I want to do. The result of that is maybe my career isn't going to be as successful as someone else who would spend the time doing that. But I'm okay. I'm satisfied. I'm living the life of an artist on my terms. Get to that point.
Yeah, well, that's one of the neat things about being an artist is that you do get to find your own path. There isn't a defined path. And one of the things that, like, and I'll kind of rephrase this just a little bit.
Okay.
Because one of the things that I think is, because we're creatives, we can take something that somebody else did and, steal like an artist, so to speak, and, take the formula, so to speak, and then find out what you like about it and what you don't like about it, and then modify it. So if we go back to the example about like Facebook, somebody says that you're supposed to do 5 Facebook posts a day. I'm not going to do that. I've tried it. I've been there, done that. I survived it for like a month. It was exhausting, not worth my time because I watched the metrics. So if the metric, and I'm a big measurement person, if the return on my investment is not good enough, then I'm not going to do it. And instead I can take it and tweak it. So maybe I'll do 1 post a day or 2 posts a day. And then, like, another question that a lot of people ask is, well, I got to do an email newsletter. How often do I have to do that? and you hear that, have to do that. You don't have to do anything.
Right.
But would you like to sell? And then, well, yeah, I'd like to sell my piece. Well, then you got to tell people about it. So, write it when you want to, try not to overthink it. And that's when we overthink it is when we get into that, I think, the comparison trap, and then that leads to the guilt trap, and then overthinking, and then I don't want to do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
You end up unintentionally making yourself feel guilty and maybe unworthy and whatever, all kinds of negative emotions and thoughts you're letting in over things that you're not doing. And because you're, at some point, hopefully you've had that conversation with yourself, like, I'm just not going to do that. I don't care what they say about email marketing or writing a newsletter, because those are both 2 things that really many artists struggle with. The whole idea of trying to commit to the written word and commit to a content schedule and commit to doing all the stuff that's going to get me traffic so I can opt people in, or even putting a pop-up on my website is just something that many artists are like, I hate those things. I don't care if it works. I don't want that on my website. It's not what I'm going to do. Well, then you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But then be realistic with yourself and say, get back down to the point. How do I get my work into the world? Who's going to buy my work? If I'm not doing anything, probably no one. You do have to market your work in some way or another. And I think that satisfied life, that satisfied artist who's has balance in their lives, comes to grip with finding a way to sell their work, enough of their work that makes them feel satisfied or happy, like, this is working. I'm getting some of what I'm making out into the world, and I seem to I have a system that's working for me, and I can improve or tweak it, but it's staying within that. I'm not doing things that are making me crazy, or I'm not committing to doing things that I'm just not going to follow through on, and then I end up wasting a bunch of time, maybe money, and not really have advanced the ball. My email list has still only got 50 people on it. Maybe you need to do something else.
If they're good quality, followers, like those 50 people could be your, full income. But the quantity, I think that's another thing, is that we get into that comparison trap, is the quantity over quality. Just because you have 2,000 followers or email subscribers doesn't mean that they're actually reading your stuff. So
Right.
that's where that relationship building really kind of comes into play.
I agree. It's the fact that someone put a like on your Facebook page or even subscribe to your newsletter doesn't mean that they're ever going to buy from you or that they're open to buy now, which is another issue for artists that you have to reckon with. And that is that even if you have a list of 50 or 100 people that are who like you and have the income to be able to afford your work and even like the kind of art that you make, because all of those things need to line up in order to get a sale. But a fourth thing comes along in most cases, especially if your art is of a larger size. The 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 larger the size, the bigger the commitment, and the longer it's going to take to probably find someone who has all of those things. They like you, they like your work, they can afford your work, and then also they have a need. They're open or ready to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm just not ready to buy. My walls are full. I'm moving or whatever rationale it is, or just not mentally not in that space where I want to buy art at this time. You have to have all of those things line up, which means in most cases that 50 is probably um, an okay number to sell a few pieces a year, originals that are, reasonably, we're talking maybe in the thousands prices. Um, but you just have to accept that it might take somebody who comes on my list or comes into my circle of influence. It could take 6 months, 12 months, even a couple of years before someone buys from you. It's the same dynamic. I've worked in a couple of galleries myself and have many friends who own galleries, and I can tell you, people, no, spontaneous sales are hard to come by in galleries and for artists. You need repeat exposure, and you need to stay top of mind with people so that when they do arrive at that point where they're ready to buy, that you're there in their thoughts and in a position where then they could take some action on it. But I think at starting at 50 is a good number to come to, because it sounds plausible or doable. Like I could get 50 pieces, or not pieces, but followers and potential buyers, prospects.
A really good friend of mine, she has a studio here at Low Mill, and she had a gentleman come in over the course of a year. He came in about 3 or 4 times and would sit for an hour, hour and a half, staring at paintings. And he just couldn't figure out which one he wanted. And then one day he came in at the end of like a year and a half, he came in and bought, I think it was 3 or 4 pieces. And she didn't really try and sell him anything. She would talk with him, and he was one of those things like, well, I never had kids, but I love the artwork that you're doing. And if I had he talked to her a little bit about commissioning a piece of the child he never had.
Wow.
Well, yeah, that would have been like a commission nightmare. Because how can you envision what he has in mind, type of thing. And so she didn't take the commission on that, but he still continued to come because he loved her art, and it took a long sales cycle. And I think that's something that just happens. And he still comes back to her studio and visits with her artwork like that. And I've got members of my email newsletter that have been following me for years, and they ping me every so often. And they say, I haven't forgot about you. I just haven't gotten the right picture. And I'm like, that's fine. I'll be here when you're ready. And but yeah, with the sales, I wrote down another thing that you were talking about. Let's see. Oh, okay. When we're talking about like art business. And then you kind of triggered a little thought in my head about uh, so I'm a full-time artist. I run Positive Painters online community. I am very much a tech nerd. I do a lot of things myself. So and I think there's several artists on here that are full-time artists as well, that if we broke down our hours on business side versus creative side, we're following that 80-20 rule. 80% is business, 20% is creative. And I know when I talk to some people about that, well, I think I'll just go with being a hobby because they're more into the creative. And the business, well, that's when you get a gallery, right? And that way you don't have to worry about marketing your own stuff. You just get in there and create, or you get a licensing agreement. So you don't have to worry about that. They handle everything and you get a little income. Yeah, the 80-20 rules are what we're following quite a bit.
I like that. I think that makes sense. When you mention licensing, it's one of those things that I'm sure if you're coaching people on it, then you talk about it, and that is when and it works to a degree with the same thing with galleries, but I think it's far more intense with licensing, and that is you have to be coachable because somebody who's selling your work through the licensing market is going to have very specific needs. They're going to tell you, I need another hummingbird in there, or you need to get more deep purple or whatever it is they're going to tell you about the work. Or I just need more of that. This is working well. You've been giving me this bird series, for instance, and I need more of that. And you lose a little bit of your independence in terms of what you're going to make as an artist, and you realize to some degree I'm using my art and my creativity in a production kind of atmosphere or system, which is going to require me to stick to my knitting on things. Not that I can't have iterations or variations, but I'm producing art basically on spec because other people have shown a great interest in it. And some artists, that's fine. They don't mind, keep on cranking out the same thing. But there are other artists that whole concept that puts them in a position of, like you said earlier, maybe I'll just leave this as a hobby because I don't want to be in that position.
Yeah. I think I've got another friend of mine, Jennifer Redstreet. She does licensing. I think it was last year, she was licensed with 17 different companies. And so, like you were saying, with the kind of the production style, saying, hey, here's our Pantone colors of the year, and here's the popular animal. Go. And then she would go off and she would create like 10 or 12 pieces and vary one after the other. And then they would come back and tell her, okay, now we're looking for this. And here's the 10, 12 pieces really, really quick. She's very, very prolific. But when, that was one of the things that kind of turned me off on it, was I didn't want to do that. And I didn't want to create the same thing 3 different ways most of the time, or 5 different ways.
Right.
But from that, she learned to, and, I learned basically about what I want to do and what I don't want to do, get real with yourself, like you were saying. And she scaled it down from 17 to like 5 companies, just working with those 5. And that's something like, when I think, because being a creative and being an artist, there is no defined path. You have to define your path, and which also means you have to be willing to try stuff and figure out what you like and what you don't like. And then if you like it, again, scale it to where it actually meets within your life. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent advice, and understand those things going in. I mentioned in my first book, the How to Profit from the Art Print Market. I was talking to my brother-in-law, who's an artist in sheet metal, and he's a basically can fix anything on a car. He's a superb mechanic, and he and his brother are like best friends, and they built a bunch of different drag cars together. I mean, the guy can do anything. He took a two-door and a four-door 55 and 56 Chevy and cut them apart and made a two-door convertible out of the two of them. And when you looked at it, you'd have no idea this came from two different cars. And I just said, David, you and your brother could open up a speed shop. You live here in the Detroit area. It's where people car crazy. You could have a booming business, doing the kind of things you do for yourself, for other people. And without a moment's hesitation, he looked at me and said, why would I want to ruin my hobby? I go to the garage and spend my time there because that's my happy place. I don't think he used the word happy place, but that was the intention. That this is where I go, and this is where I really have my life's enjoyment, is out there in the garage. And if I want to take, as they did in one case, over a decade to build one of their race cars, they'd work on it a little bit of time and then move something else in and work on a current project. But it took them over a decade to build one of their 57 Chevy race cars. It's a really cool car. I don't want somebody telling me when they want something or that I have to do something for them. That would not be any fun for me at all.
Yeah.
So that was a real epiphany for me. It should have been. It comes right back to the heart of what I was talking about with living the life of an artist. In some ways, as an artist in sheet metal and just the mechanical things around cars, he's living the life of an artist, producing what he wants to do on the level that he wants to produce it on, and is completely happy with the fact that I'm not in this for the money. I'm in this because this makes me happy. It makes me tick. And I'm completely satisfied with that. He had reached that balance in his life just instinctively. He didn't need me or anybody else to coach him on that. And he also knew instinctively to reject my suggestion to him out of hand. Like, no, I'm not even remotely interested in that. That would muck up my life.
Yeah.
That should have been a clue to me. That was, I wrote that book in 2005, 16 years ago. It took me a long, long time before I started coming around to really understanding the depth of what he was saying and how it applies across the board. And that's what I'm trying to do today, is just give artists permission that they should give themselves permission to live the lives that they want to live, and be okay with the fact that maybe my art isn't museum quality. Frankly, most people's art isn't museum quality. It's just the way of the world. We're not all equally talented or equally lucky. That's going to put us in a position where our art gets into museum. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a content, very happy, fulfilled, joyous life as an artist if you are real with yourself, accept what's going on, and make good choices about what you're doing in terms of how you're living your life and how you're getting your work out into the world.
Yeah.
And I think your idea on the 50 people, you and I, that's one of the things we talked in some way or another when we were chatting previously. Because the subtitle of one of my best-selling books, Guerrilla Marketing for Artists, is how 100 collectors can bulletproof your career.
Yeah.
I use the theory of 100 collectors, that if a collector is somebody that would buy 2 or 3 or more pieces from you over the course of your career, that would be what I would consider a collector. And if you got 100 of them, you've sold 200 or 300 original pieces of art to a very small group of people, and maybe even more, maybe as much as 500, depending on the situation. That's a lot of your work. They say on average most artists can make about 1,000 pieces of work in a lifetime. That's 33 originals a year over a 30-year period. it's that maybe that's low for some artists and high for others. Depends
Yeah.
on what age you start and how prolific and productive you are, and to some degree, and what the size of, if you're making 5x7s or digital art or photography.
Should I take the trash out?
I'll get it in just a minute.
That's funny.
You hear that?
You got a life too.
I just got late this morning and didn't get the trash out before we jumped on, but fortunately they don't come until later, so I will get to it post show. The idea of 100 collectors, and that brings us back to that following or that tribe, and the quote was not, if you don't have a tribe or a following. The quote that came to me, and I just mangled it earlier, was, if you don't have a warm market, build one.
Yeah.
And because I think that's where I see this all the time, where artists get this in their mind, that I have to sell, I got to be in galleries, or got to be huge social media following, and they're doing all kinds of things to try to get into galleries or sell to people that are hundreds or thousands or miles away. And they've ignored what's right around them. You have a local market as an artist, and you have a warm market as an artist. Local means somebody's within a physical distance of you. Warm means that you have some relationship with them, and they could live anywhere in the world. But if you're going to sell human to human based on relationships, it's going to come out of a warm market.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about with the gentleman who eventually bought 3 pieces of art from somebody. That was a warm market sale. That was not just over the transom spontaneous sale. That was a warm market sale, and that hopefully that relationship can blossom into other things, maybe referrals or introductions to other opportunities that you wouldn't have come across without having a relationship with someone. So that's the other part of it, I think, is even if you're an introvert, you need to find a way to build a warm market and embrace your warm market. And you can sell a lot of your art that way, with very low pressure and not all the highfalutin big, I need a giant 10,000 follower list, or I'm cranking out email marketing and 5 posts a week, 5 posts a day on Facebook, all of that stuff. You can dial all of that way back if you have a warm market.
Yeah. Yeah. I found the best way to get that warm market was actually at those art shows, and where you actually went and got a space, you got accepted into a juried show, or you just got a space and got them on my email list.
Right.
And or because you actually got to talk with them. And one of the things that really, really helped me, because I'm an introvert, I think you and I talked a little bit about that, is I had an extrovert friend of mine also within the booth. And so while I'm talking one-on-one with somebody, she could kind of warm up the next person and kind of hold them a little bit and keep them engaged, or bring people in. I mean, she was on it. But the people that I've met, like in person at those shows, I think have been the ones that have been the long-standing.
And that's just one way to do it. You can build a warm market through, let's say that you're doing horses, or you like doing sports cars, or you find yourself in some sort of niche where there's people that are like-minded people. It can be at shows, or you can start getting involved in either local groups where you actually go out and belong to a club that an equine club of some sort or another, or that I know when I talk to the Fine Art America's been syndicating my blogs for years, more than 5 years. when I talked to the owner, Sean Brohire, who's launched it, and asked him, tell me about some of your more successful artists. He had somebody at that time who was doing over $10,000 a month in sales. And what she does is, and this probably got killed during COVID, there are big automotive swap meets where in the local area where she lives, and she likes taking pictures. Unusual, she'll find an unusual angle. She looks at art, she looks at automotive, the parts of cars is almost sculptural, which it's totally understandable when you see her photography. So she'd go out and ask permission, can I take a picture, show her portfolio, can I take a picture of your car? And get permission. And then she'd go back and show them the picture and sell them the work. So she was actually, Fine Art America was just a service for her. It was a place where she could sell her prints. She wasn't expecting any sales coming because people wandered onto the site and found her work. She was going out, making the work, finding the buyer, and then bringing the art back to them to show them. And like, here's just the digital portfolio. You can order this in a frame print on Fine Art America. Here's the link. And she's doing $10,000 a month doing sales like that. So
nice. Got to get out.
Get in that warm market.
Yeah. Well, I know we've been at this for almost an hour, and I haven't seen any questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in there now. But otherwise, is there anything while they're kind of waiting on those? I could tell you another joke.
All right.
Okay. So let me think. Okay. So past, present, and future walk into the bar. It was pretty tense. Okay. So, I read that one online last night, and I just kind of giggled. My husband was already asleep, and I just kind of giggled.
Okay, well, that was a good laugh out loud one.
You like to write, so you got that one pretty good. But so I guess in conclusion, is there anything that you would tell, like, just kind of sum up, what would you tell an artist that is getting started or as now and has an idea that maybe they want to do this as a full-time career, and they're kind of at that cusp? Do I decide to make this a full-time career, or do I decide to make it a hobby? What would you tell that person about work-life balance?
I would say you need to have a conversation with yourself about what's really important in your life and what's going to make you happy, and also try to think through what are the consequences of what you're doing. In other words, committing to be an artist full-time is what does that mean? You can have you can think about the happy side, that I'm in galleries, I've got my own following, and I'm selling directly off my website, and I'm producing enough work, and it's that I'm actually able to support myself. That's the fun side of it. The difficult side is, how do I make that happen? And am I willing to do that? And is it worth having that full-time career to do that? For some, it is. For others, it is not. And if you can get to that point where you understand that I'm capable of doing those things, and I want to, and I will, that's great. But you might also understand, you know what? I don't really have the resources to be able to do that. I'm not very business minded, and I maybe need to rethink this and think I should dial it back, and just to keep creating art and massaging how I'm getting it out into the world, getting better and better at it. But don't put the pressure on myself that I'm going to turn this into a full-time business in the next 6 months or a year. Somewhere in there between that, I'm not really geared up and ready to go full-time, or I am, is where you need to find yourself. And if you can get to that point where you understand what's the best path for you now, then you can start making good decisions about what's important. Start prioritizing. These are the things I actually need to do. As Stephen Covey says, put it in is it both urgent and important, and work on those tasks first, and that will lead you to amplified and greater success as you layer one thing on top of another. But don't put too much on yourself. Have realistic expectations and start with, I want to live with a joyous, well-lived artist life to begin with, and then let your other decisions emanate from that initial decision about how you want to live your life as an artist. Start there and then add in the other aspects of it.
Yeah, I think a really just key thing that it just resonated over and over in my head was create the joyous life that you want. And I know when you do that and you're sharing that joyous life with others, others will just naturally follow, and that naturally will become a business over time if you so choose. And that can take, I think the other aspect of business, it takes at least 3 years before a business is kind of up and running.
That's a really good advice. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
Almost no business does. If you see one that does, be happy for them, but also recognize something happened in there that I can't replicate, and the likelihood that I can have the same thing happen for me is pretty slim. And just don't put yourself in that position of feeling like a failure because I'm not an overnight success.
We can't all be Joe Biden's son and just get into a gallery overnight because we're Joe Biden's son. No, we have to work it.
Yeah, if you have good connections, that's,
Yeah.
If something's available to you.
Connections are good, but most of us don't have that.
Right. You gotta have. Let's face it. Even if it doesn't matter whose son you are, if you're put in a position where your art has to sell, there better be some quality, or it's not going to be sustainable. It just won't be. It has to. The output has to be worthy of the result if you want to sustain it as a full-time career. You got to keep making good work.
Yep. Yeah. All right.
So live that art. Go to artist.life. Read the Artist Life Manifesto.
Yeah.
It's full of my best advice, and like I said, kind of a brain dump on 33 years of what I've come to believe about what is art, and who is an artist, and how you can just think it through to become that satisfied, happy person where you are living the joyous, well-lived life of an artist.
All right. So you guys can find Barney not only on his manifesto on artist.life, but you can also follow him on artmarketingnews.com. And where else can they find you? On the Instagram and the Twitter and the Facebook and all that stuff?
If just look me up at Barney Davey. I'm Barney Davey on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on my personal page is Barney Davey on Facebook. So if you Google Barney Davey, you'll find me.
Yeah.
And you can join my email list if you want to get my weekly newsletter on artmarketingnews.com.
Yep, it's good stuff. Good, really good stuff. So I really appreciate you joining me today. And yeah, this was fun. So I'm going to be joining Barney on the 25th?
Right.
On yours, where we're going to be talking about everything you need to know about Etsy before you start an Etsy shop. So I'll be with him and his crew on that date, so you guys can join us over there as well. Next week, we will be talking on this same Bat channel about the part 3 of a series of artist revenue streams where we're going to talk specifically about art commissions. So be sure to register for that.
Sounds like a good one.
Yeah, I love commissions. Commissions is that's one of my favorites things to do, because you get to create and then you get to say here and then watch the joy.
I know other artists who wouldn't touch one with a 10-foot pole.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, I don't do people.
Well, you got a good warm market.
Yeah.
And you know how to deal with people. Commission work is just knowing how to set the right expectations to begin with. I think is where it goes off the rails in many cases.
Yeah.
The wrong expectations were either there was none to begin with, or they were the wrong ones, and that's where people get into trouble with revisions and all kinds of other things.
Oh yeah, that would be something we definitely talk about too, is kind of how to define that contract and those terms and conditions around that, so you can set the expectations and not apologize for change controls.
Right. This is my deal. I realize you're coming to me and paying me, but I'm still, you stay in control of the situation in a firm but polite way, and you're more likely to end up with a good result by sticking to your guns, or just having the expectations set in such a way that people don't even realize you're controlling it. You're just letting them know how things work.
Yeah. Here's the process. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. It'll be a good one, and I've got some templates for you guys. So be sure to check that out and register ahead. So I think that's it. Anything else, Barney?
No, I'll say thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here with you, and I look forward to having you work with me on my broadcast, and I'll be putting out information about that later today. So
sounds good.
I look forward to seeing you again in about a week.
All right, sounds great. So be sure to check out Barney on artmarketingnews.com and on artist.life. And check out those good reads. So until next time, you guys stay safe, happy, and healthy, and happy painting. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.